Lynyrd Skynyrd was among the most influential original rock bands of the 1970s. Then tragedy struck. Here's the history of Skynyrd from the 60s to the present, told through the band's own music. The band fans know and love as Lynyrd Skynyrd originally called themselves the 1%. They had such a following in their hometown of Jacksonville, Florida, that in 1969, a local music store manager wrangled them some studio time. He wasn't just being nice, he wanted to sell the band's music. As for the 1%, they'd have something to pitch the radio stations and sell to fans. If all went well, a recording would be their first step toward taking their sound to the masses.
Play my music till I hit pay dirt.
They headed into Norm Vincent Studios to record 2 songs. Frontman Ronnie Van Sant selected the shortest, most radio-friendly tunes in their repertoire. Michelle, written about his young daughter.
Michelle, oh girl, I need you, baby, more than the air I breathe.
The other track was called Need All My Friends.
Lord, I'm tired now, wanna go home.
About 300 copies were pressed by the tiny Shade Tree Records label, but by the time they were ready, the band changed its name to Lynyrd Skynyrd with a slightly different spelling. Spelling changes aside, Need All My Friends was the first step on the road to a record deal for the band that would find fame as Lynyrd Skynyrd. Most fans never heard Down South Jukin' until after the band's tragic 1977 plane crash. It's the initial track on Skynyrd's first and last, a compilation of little-heard, obscure, and early recordings. On the album, Down South Jukin' is little more than a demo recorded at Alabama's legendary Muscle Shoals Sound Studios, and it's an interesting artifact for hardcore Lynyrd Skynyrd fanatics.
Down south you can, looking for peace of mind.
Before the band gained the polish and confidence that come with time and experience, Skynyrd's sound was a bit rough. Written by guitarists Gary Rossington and Ronnie Van Sant, it's a bit of juvenilia, but you can hear the promise of what's to come in the clever musical motifs and lyrical turns of phrase. It's also one of the few places where early and future band member Ricky Medlock, later of the band Blackfoot, can be heard. Down South Jukin' is the work of a band in progress about to emerge with a signature sensibility.
Won't you give me 3 steps, give me 3 steps of mist.
In the 21st century, Gimme 3 Steps is one of Skynyrd's most listened to songs, but when it was first released as the lead single off the band's debut album, 1973's pronounced Lynyrd Skynyrd, it didn't get much traction. But Gimme 3 Steps was a preview of everything the band would bring to rock music, both the old-fashioned and the innovative, in the years to come. Skynyrd often pulled from true-life events to write story songs with wild plots. Gimme 3 Steps is based on an encounter Ronnie Van Sant had in a bar.
Wait a minute, miss, I didn't even kiss her.
Gary Rossington told Guitar World he had started dancing with this chick and this guy came in and was going to beat him up, and Ronnie said, "Just give me 3 steps and I'm gone." The guy had a gun and he was a redneck and he was drunk. A nasty combination of things.
It ain't no fun staring straight down a 44.
As Rossington remembered it, Ronnie took off like a bat out of hell.
I think the most questioned that I ever get being in Lynyrd Skynyrd is, are you guys from Alabama?
The answer is no. Lynyrd Skynyrd is from Florida, but that didn't stop Sweet Home Alabama from becoming the only Skynyrd song to ever reach the top 10 on the pop chart. Not only that, the Southern rock banger is as much of a thesis statement as there ever could be for the Skynyrd sound. So why Alabama? Well, this song is a response to 2 Neil Young songs that diss the South in its entirety, 1970's Southern Man and 1972's Alabama. Both songs mention the KKK and the practice of slavery.
Well, you know, Southern Man's not a happy song.
The members of Lynyrd Skynyrd were actually all huge Young fans, so they wrote Sweet Home Alabama to set him straight.
They wanted to show that no, the South isn't like that. We're here, we don't need you to tell us about that.
Skynyrd's lyrics amount to a diss track, maybe the most famous diss track ever recorded, although Kendrick Lamar may disagree. In his autobiography, Waging Heavy Peace, Young admitted, "My own song Alabama richly deserved the shot Lynyrd Skynyrd gave me with their great record. I don't like my words when I listen to it. They are accusatory and condescending, not fully thought out, and too easy to misconstrue." Skynyrd managed to foster understanding and turned out an iconic song at the same time. No small feat.
To me, there's nothing freer than a bird, you know, just flying wherever he wants to go.
You know what's next, even if you're not a diehard Skynyrd fan.
I'm as free as bird.
Free Bird both is and isn't a Southern rock anthem. Sure, the bluesy twang is there in both the guitar melody and the lead vocals, but Free Bird is also as propulsive and hard-rocking as anything a non-Southern band would crank out in the 70s. And when it comes to the final section of the song, we get the iconic guitar duel. showcase of expert rapid-fire axe magic. Even with their insane display of musical mastery, Skynyrd's lyrics about a man who can't be tamed absolutely begged for an audience sing-along. Saturday Night Special demonstrated that the group's songwriters, Allen Collins, Ronnie Van Sant, and Gary Rossington, could write songs with complex lyrics and difficult themes.
Mr. Saturday Night Special.
The song takes an explicit stance against gun ownership. Appearing on Lynyrd Skynyrd's third studio album, Nothing Fancy, Saturday Night Special sounds like a typical song by the band, notable for its signature multi-guitar sound.
Shoots him full of a 38.
The lyrics, however, poke holes in macho archetypes, deriding men who take a shoot first, ask questions later approach, and arguing that guns serve no purpose besides being murder weapons.
Handguns are made for killing.
It also marked a commercial turning point for the band, appearing on the soundtrack of the hit Burt Reynolds movie The Longest Yard, in a deal that was made before the song had even been recorded.
What's your name, little girl?
In 1977, Lynyrd Skynyrd released their fifth studio album, Street Survivors. The first single off the record was What's Your Name, a gritty, groovy, danceable jam which, like Gimme 3 Steps and Sweet Home Alabama, was inspired by reality.
One of the crew had to go with one of the guests.
Speaking of Guitar World, Rossington said, "It's all basically a true story. One of our road crew got in a fight at a bar with one of the hotel guests and they kicked us out, and we said we'd leave if they sent a bottle of champagne to our room. It's just about being young and free." Audiences loved it and sent the song to number 13 on the pop chart, Skynyrd's second highest Hot 100 placement ever. For much of the 1970s, Lynyrd Skynyrd had two speeds, fun and epic. But with that smell, the group showed off their dark side. Ronnie Van Sant had a foreboding that bad things were coming and wrote the song as a warning to his friends.
Whiskey bottles and brand new cars.
Ronnie is quoted in Tim Morse's book Classic Rock Stories explaining, "I wrote that song when Gary had his car accident. It was last year, and Allen Collins and Billy Powell also were in car accidents all in the space of 6 months. So I had a creepy feeling things were going against us, so I thought I'd write a morbid song." That smell appeared on Street Survivors, the final Lynyrd Skynyrd studio album of the decade. Ronnie Van Sant's premonition would prove to be tragically accurate. Lynyrd Skynyrd reunited in the 1980s and continued to perform into the 1990s and beyond, but the first and most special Skynyrd era ended abruptly on October 20th, 1977. A small plane transporting the band to a gig malfunctioned and crashed into a swamp in Mississippi. Both pilots died in the accident, as did the group's assistant road manager, backing singer Casey Gaines, guitarist Steve Gaines, and lead singer and creative force Ronnie Van Sant.
Ronnie told me that he would never live to see 30. And that he was going to go out with his boots on, in other words, on the road.
Just 3 days earlier, the band had released Street Survivors, which includes some of its most loved songs. The LP became an inadvertent final artistic statement from Van Sant. Gaines and Van Sant wrote You Got That Right together, and it was one of the last songs the original band recorded. Issued as a posthumous promotional single in April 1978, You Got That Right peaked at number 69 on the pop chart.
You got that right.
After the plane crash, it took the Survivors a full decade before they were ready to perform again under the Skynyrd name. It happened at the behest of Gary Rossington, who started out by organizing a single show. That show ballooned into a 30-show reunion tour that kicked off in 1987. The tour was intended to pay tribute to their deceased bandmates. Replacing Ronnie Van Sant on lead vocals and the reformulated Lynyrd Skynyrd was his own brother, Johnny Van Sant.
Drivin Man.
The reunion also launched the Lynyrd Skynyrd collection titled Legend, made up of obscure and never-released recordings. One of the highlights was Drivin Man, the first new Lynyrd Skynyrd song since the late 1970s, although it was actually an old recording of a song featuring Ronnie Van Sant. The fans loved it, and it climbed to number 12 on Billboard's rock chart. Drivin Man proved that Skynyrd wasn't done yet. In fact, the band's reputation and popularity had actually grown since the tragedy 10 years earlier. Encouraged by their successful reunion tour and solid sales of Legend, Lynyrd Skynyrd made the reunion permanent.
There on the line was a friend of mine.
Since regrouping, Lynyrd Skynyrd has released many more studio albums than it did during their original 1970s incarnation. The band's second era began with the album Lynyrd Skynyrd 1991. With Johnny Van Sant on vocals and 4 Golden Age members, Gary Rossington, Leon Wilkeson, Ed King, and Billy Powell on board, the new Skynyrd sounded a lot like the old Skynyrd. The debut single from Lynyrd Skynyrd 1991 was Smokestack Lightning, a quick piano-based boogie blues bar song.
Smokestack Lightning.
The Despite sounding nothing like what was hip at the time, Smokestack Lightning was a smash, peaking at number 2 on the rock chart. Lynyrd Skynyrd played a major role in shaping Southern rock, which in turn helped inspire modern mainstream country music. By the early 2000s, just 2 of the original Skynyrd band members were still playing together, and they embraced the sound of the musicians it helped inspire.
My hair's turning white.
Party-loving bro country singers and country-infused rock acts like Kid Rock were the 21st century descendants of Skynyrd.
My neck's always been red.
In 2003, Skynyrd was just one of many well-known acts to release sentimental, aggressively patriotic songs as part of the cultural response to the terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001. Alongside Toby Keith's Courtesy of the Red, White, and Blue and Alan Jackson's Where Were You When the World Stopped Turning came Lynyrd Skynyrd's Red, White, and Blue, a celebration of American trad values like pride in family, work, and nation. Skynyrd's anthem anchored Vicious Cycle, the last major album released by the band.
My collar's still blue.
After 2003, there was a series of barely distributed records and live albums, and the band settled into the casino and county fair nostalgia circuit. Death of the last remaining original member, Gary Rossington, in 2023 meant Skynyrd no longer had any connection to its heralded past, bringing the tangled history of Lynyrd Skynyrd into what's likely its final chapter.